He shifted in his seat trying to find comfort, but the plane felt smaller than ever, as if the walls were closing in on him, and the air smelled faintly of coffee and recycled fear. He glanced at the little girl whose eyes seemed too knowing for her age, and she was watching him with a patience that unnerved him. She did not speak for several minutes, and he thought he might be imagining the intensity of her stare. But then she reached into her backpack and pulled out a small music box. It was scratched and worn, and she handed it to him, saying it belonged to someone who needed it most. He turned it over in his hands, feeling the cold metal and the faint vibration as if it contained a heartbeat of its own. And when he opened the lid, a tune played softly, tinkling across the cabin, making him feel a memory he could not place, hovering at the edge of his mind. The notes were delicate but carried a weight he could not understand. And as the melody continued, he felt his chest tighten and a lump rise in his throat. He looked down at the little girl, and she was smiling. But there was a shadow behind her smile, something that whispered warning or perhaps promise. And he asked her who gave her the music box, and she only shook her head as if some knowledge was too large for words. And then she said something that made his stomach drop. "You will know when the time comes," and he wanted to laugh at the absurdity of it. But the seriousness in her eyes stopped him, and he wondered what forces in the world could place such a child beside him in this exact moment. The plane rattled slightly and the overhead lights flickered, but no one else seemed to notice, and he looked back at the empty aisle and felt suddenly exposed, as if the air around him had shifted and contained secrets waiting to be unearthed. He tried to distract himself by staring out the window at the endless clouds, but they were no longer innocent puffs of white. They seemed like layers of memories, each hiding something he had forgotten or refused to remember. And then he noticed a shadow among the clouds. It moved unnaturally, as if conscious, and he blinked hard to make it go away. But it lingered, growing larger, stretching toward the plane like a dark hand reaching for him. The little girl hummed softly to herself, and he realized the tune from the music box had transferred into her voice. It was fragile, yet commanding, and he felt drawn into it, unwilling to resist the pull as the shadow outside seemed to ripple in response to the sound. He tried to cover his ears, but the music carried inside him deeper than sound. It was a vibration that reached his bones and reminded him of things he had lost or tried to lose. And suddenly, a thought hit him. He could not place where it came from, but it was urgent and insistent, and it whispered a warning. "You cannot turn back now." He looked down at the music box again and noticed markings he had not seen before, symbols etched along the edges, tiny but precise, as if someone had carved them for a very particular purpose. And he traced them with his finger, feeling a strange heat pulse beneath his touch. And when he looked up, the girl was gone. She had vanished from the seat beside him, leaving only the faint echo of her presence, as if she had never been there. And his heart raced, trying to comprehend the impossibility, when a voice called his name softly from somewhere behind the cabin, and it was familiar. Yet he could not place it, the way a dream feels familiar yet unreachable. He turned slowly and saw no one standing, but the shadows cast by the overhead compartment seemed to move independently, twisting and writhing in the dim light. And he felt a chill crawl up his spine, as if unseen eyes were studying him, and he remembered the words of the girl, "You will know when the time comes." And he realized he was already at that time, and he did not know what he was supposed to know. And then a sound like a door creaking far away echoed through the plane, a sound that made every nerve in his body tense, and he felt the air grow heavier, as if the walls themselves were pressing closer to him, demanding attention. The memory came unbidden, and he recoiled. It was a memory of a place he had not thought of in decades, a house at the edge of a field where the wind whispered secrets he had refused to hear. And suddenly he knew the music box belonged to that house and to him, and he did not know why or how. And a tear slid down his cheek involuntarily, because the truth of it pressed too hard against his mind, and he wanted to scream to anyone who would listen to tell him what it meant. But the cabin was silent, except for the hum of the engines and the occasional cough of a passenger, oblivious to the gravity unfolding mere feet away. He clutched the music box tighter and felt an almost magnetic pull guiding him toward the aisle, and he did not know if he was moving of his own volition or if some force had taken control. And he noticed the pages of the notebook the girl had left fluttering as if alive. The wind of the cabin, though minimal, seemed to dance through the sheets, animating the words she had written in a looping scrawl that made no sense. yet called to him as if each letter contained a key to a puzzle he could not yet decipher, and he bent closer to read them. But as he did, a shadow fell across the pages, obscuring the letters, and he felt a shiver of recognition. It was a shape he had seen before in fleeting glimpses at the edges of his life, something dark, yet not malevolent, but certainly not friendly, something that thrived on silence and observation, and it seemed to be waiting for him to act or to fail. And he realized, suddenly, that the little girl had not been innocent. She had been a guide, a herald, a warning, and he could not decide which. And the music box trembled in his hands as if reacting to the presence of the shadow, and he felt a strange certainty that everything he had ever known was about to change in a way that could not be undone, and he realized that by the time the plane landed, he would either understand or lose something essential forever. The pages of the notebook flipped themselves and revealed a single word repeated over and over in her childish handwriting. A word that made his pulse spike and his breath catch. It was a name he had almost forgotten, but never truly lost. And it rang inside him like a bell in a silent room, and he felt compelled to speak it aloud to dispel the weight pressing on his chest. But the air seemed to thicken with every heartbeat, and when he tried to move his lips, the words refused to form, and he understood that the recognition itself was a threshold, a test of his courage, and he did not know if he would pass. He looked out the window once more. The clouds had thickened, and the horizon was gone, swallowed by a gray that seemed endless, and he felt a tug toward the rear of the plane, and though he tried to resist, he found his legs moving of their own accord, taking him step by step toward something unknown, and the music box hummed in his pocket as if aware of the journey, and he realized the little girl's words had been a key not just to unlocking memory but to surviving the path ahead, and he shivered, imagining what awaited him when he reached the source of the pull and wondered if he would find answers, or only more questions. He followed the pull through the narrow aisle, feeling the vibrations of the music box resonating through his chest as if it were a heartbeat that belonged to someone else, and the cabin seemed to stretch longer than it should have. The passengers frozen in muted poses like statues, oblivious to the invisible current guiding him toward the rear, and he realized he could not stop it even if he wanted to, because the force had a will stronger than his own, and every step he took seemed to echo back from the walls, whispering warnings he could not fully comprehend. The little girl appeared suddenly at the end of the aisle as if she had never left. She smiled faintly and said almost teasingly, "You are finally awake." And he felt the weight of the words settle over him, a mixture of relief and terror, because he did not know if she meant awake in the literal sense or awake to something far larger than himself. And when he tried to ask, she only held up a finger, shushing him as if sound itself could break a delicate barrier, and he understood that the answers he sought were not simple, and that some truths demanded silence. He followed her down the narrow corridor toward the exit of the plane, and the lights flickered ominously, casting shadows that moved in time with the music box. The air was thick as if it carried fragments of memories he had long buried, and the hum of the engines now sounded distant and hollow, like the echo of a life he had almost forgotten. And then she stopped in front of a small door that had not been there before, and her hand hovered above the handle as if she was summoning permission from somewhere unseen, and he felt his pulse spike, because he knew stepping through it would change everything. She whispered, "Step inside," and he did without hesitation, even though his mind screamed at him to resist the unknown. The door swung open silently, and he was enveloped in darkness that smelled faintly of rain and old books. And when he blinked, his eyes adjusted to reveal a room that seemed impossibly vast, with walls stretching beyond sight, and in the center of the room a single chair faced him, and upon it lay a coat that looked familiar, yet distant, like a memory of someone he once was. And the music box began to play again softly, but this time it seemed to carry words hidden beneath the notes calling his name. He walked toward the chair, the floor beneath his feet smooth and cold, and each step echoed with a sound that was both warning and welcome. And when he reached it, he saw that the coat was not empty. A shadow lingered there, almost tangible, moving like smoke in slow, deliberate patterns, and he realized with a shock that it was connected to him somehow, a fragment of his own self he had never